What's up, guys? So, took the beast for a ride today. Everything ran great. Terminator was flawless. Everything felt good, except my suspension. Been working on that a little bit in the Junk in the Trunk series, and just didn't feel right. Felt kind of like floaty, right? So, got under there, started looking, and I had cut my springs, right? I don't know if you guys can see that. Cut that little guy, bent it back down. Anyway, this is the coil spring I had in here. Coil springs that are supposed to be in there. See that? A little bit bigger. It's about a coil I took off of there, right? Normally that's pretty good, right? Everything seems to line up. Just gets a little lowered height, increased spring rate. Kind of feels a little better, maybe a little bouncy, but still works. Well, for some reason, my front suspension was riding on the bump stops. So thankfully I upgraded to the ZQ8 bump stops. They're like not polyurethane, but something like that. That new Gucci shit they got. So I had some of those on there. Thankfully that helped hold the weight of the car. But still felt like a big pile of poopy. So I got me some of the correct springs. Well, I say that, but these aren't really correct either. These are off the, so I got a G-body front end, right? So if you go online, you can find a little spring rate chart, dealy hoppers. And this bad boy is for an F-body. No clue what year. I'm sure it's on the chart. Didn't fucking pay attention to it. Anyway, this is one of the stiffest ones you can get. It's got the same height that I need. I just banged into the car there. And I should get my front end up a little bit. Take care of that rake I had going on and that floaty feeling, right? So we're gonna slap these bad boys in there and lower it back down and see what's going on there. Also, while I got this thing apart, the driver's side is a standard thread rotor, so the lug nuts on it are standard thread. Passenger side, I guess, got replaced at some point after this front cross member grafting shenanigans happened, and they used a newer one. So I guess that's a 81 and later is when they went to metric or something like that. So yeah, that's got a newer one, and it's got metric studs and metric lug nuts, and all the other ones are standard, and that's driving me crazy. So I'm going to switch out the rotors so that they all match and have the same lug nut. You know, it's little things in life that, you know, make you feel better. So I'm going to attempt to whip that bad boy out and put the new spring in there and drop it back down and see what she does. Alright, so update since last time. Been working on this front end and rear end on the Pontiac. I got the springs in there. Nice ride to it. I found a bolt that was jammed in the lower control arm. I don't know what you'd call that. Where the control arm goes up and down right there by the bushing. There was a bolt in there that was restricting the travel a little bit. So we got that out. Got the springs in there. Everything's looking pretty good. Took it around the block, and it's just not what I'm looking for. So with the springs in there not being cut, it rides better, but it's about 3 inches higher than where it was before. So I guess cutting one coil and whatever else I had done has dropped it 3 inches. So that does not keep with the look I'm looking for with the car. Have a little, you know, stink bug lean to it and nice and low. That's not this. So got me some drop spindles. The G-body suspension I'm running has the same front suspension as an S10. So I got me some S10 drop spindles. Got me a little Speedway has this little adapter for the tie rod end that allows you to hook a rod end to it. So I got that and some rod ends and swedge tubes. So I'm going to make that tie rod end both sides, and the adjuster kind of delete that and just put these tie rods and the swedge tube on there. Should take care of that bump steer I got. These springs are good, feel nice. So with this drop spindle, I think that's really going to tie everything together. Finally got this rotor on, and so now I'm running standard lugs all the way around, which my OCD I had to do that. Fun fact, the 78 to 88 is the body range for G-body, and 78 being the first year, I thought I'd get the lowest model year. spindle, well, that spindle, or I'm sorry, rotor, that rotor is a 1 year only setup, and the spacing between the two bearings, you know, you got one here and one out here, and the rotor kind of sets the distance for that. The spacing between them was farther than the rest of them, so when I would tighten down and try to get lash on the rotor to set the bearings, it just wouldn't. Doesn't matter how tight I tightened it or put a washer under it or something, trying to, you know, suck up that gap, thinking I had the wrong bearings or something. It would still rock on those bearings. So it was too wide. So I got the right names. I got the right rotor and put on there. Everything's tight, runs good, nice and smooth. Brakes feel good, front ends feels good. I'm just not happy with it. When I took it around the block, it kind of had a little shimmy to the rear. I don't know what that is. I'm going to have to look into that. I do have the rear sway bar on there. I do have the leaf springs mounted correctly. My shocks are in the right spot. It just doesn't feel right. It feels kind of loose. So I got to look into that. You can kind of see here as the sway bar is set up. I think I've shown this before. It is a little close on this side. I think it's close enough that it's rubbing at full compression, so I have to dimple that a little bit. So yeah, we'll have to investigate that a little bit. I did have to break these little tabs off, so the sway bar had some room to move around, and kind of tack these muffler clamps on so it wouldn't spin or anything, and it seems to be holding pretty good. Feels, you know, decent for the body roll. It just kind of feels a little loose. So today I'm going to take apart all the front end suspension, take everything off. The lower control arms are original for the car. The subframe is from, I'm trying to guess it based on the parts that fit on this damn thing, and I'm guessing somewhere between 78 and 80. I don't know. Nothing newer than 81 is metric, so I know I'm not down there. So below that should be where I'm running, probably somewhere between 78 and 80. So I got me some bushings for rebuilding the lower control arms. I'm going to throw those on there, and then I'm going to box in the control arm while I got it out. So right around where the bushing mounts in, I'm going to plate that, and around where the lower ball joint goes, I'm going to plate that, and then clean up that lip. You know, drop spindles apparently hit. We'll find that out here shortly. Oh, cool. Give me some my little bushings here. So press those in. These are just factory replacement parts. I'm not going too crazy with this thing, but in some spots. But a low control arm bushing, I'm not that worried about. I need a little bit of give to it. So that, take everything apart, press bushings in, plate the lower control arms, put the shocks and springs back in, and get ready for this drop spindle so I can bolt that up, get it back on the road, see how it feels. Hang in there. What up, guys? So the parts truck just came. I'm going to show you guys what's next in this build. Alright, I got some pieces in here I'm going to walk you through, but first, get the welding slag off the camera. Let me give it to Logan. Say hi, Logan.
Hi.
Logan. Alright, so lower control arms. This didn't come on the parts truck, this came from me. Original lower control arms, I boxed them in around here by the bushings. I boxed them in around the spring mount. I also put some plate around here by the ball joint. Sometimes these crack and come off. So I boxed that in real good, give them a good coat of paint. Not worried about that little ball joint because you guys that don't know, I'm running a G-body chassis. So that's 78 to 88 Monte Carlo. And a bunch of other crap. I'm not an internet Google search guy, so there you go. It's a whole bunch of crap for G-bodies, S10s, all those kind of chassis come from dirt track and do street, what do you call it? Circle track racing, dirt track racing. So there's a lot of aftermarket parts, a lot of racing parts available cheap. So metric chassis, went to the Speedway. They always got good parts, good cheap parts. Let me rephrase that. Good parts for cheap. Doesn't mean they're cheap. So I got me a lower ball joint +1, so it's a 1-inch tall ball joint, right? This is a ultra low friction take apart ball joint. So not only am I getting the tall ball joint, So I can space this up, and I have the tall ball joint in the upper control arm. It's going to space that. It'll be like having a tall spindle, and it's going to help me with my bump steer. But this little guy, you can actually take the ball joint itself apart and rebuild it. You never got to buy another ball joint again. That's crazy. I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm going to get this little guy pressed in there. I got some somewhere around here, I got some lower control arm bushings that I'm going to throw in there, and that'll wrap up that lower control arm. I already got my Speedway upper control arms on there. I just got some S10 2-inch drop spindles, S10, G-body, all those ones. They kind of swap back and forth for the most part. So I got me some Speedway S10 drop spindles. That's going to lower the ride height a little bit. Still going to use my 56-62 springs. And then, while I'm looking at bump steer, this is my little steering, my tie rod assembly, right? So you got inner and outer tie rod and a little adjuster, and it's just kind of locked to the height that it gets locked at. So the fucking comes off the steering arm, it's in the bottom of the spindle, and that's where you're at. Well, I was doing the whole Google thing, and I came across these little tie rod adapters. If you can see this little guy, I'm gonna zoom in on that one, or just look at that. I'll zoom in, just look. So this goes into your spindle, and then you can set your tie rod height off of that, right? So if I'm sitting in the spindle here, and I need to adjust my bump steer, I can move it up or down to make this flat, to make this whole line flat, which is supposed to be where you want to be at for bump steer. Granted, you got to measure so you know what you're doing and how far. But I just thought it was pretty cool I can adjust this, right? I'm like, man, this got to be expensive. These little guys, it says it fits into all GM tie rods, $10 each. So for two of these, you got your little tie rod adapters. You're like, man, okay, let's go down this rabbit hole, start pricing out parts, right? Let me see how I can make this into something cool and adjustable in height and length, like this little guy. So normal bump steer kits, just your bump steer kit would be this little guy. The rod end and this little sledge tube here would be like $160. I got this entire assembly with the outer tie rod, the inner tie rod, both jam nuts, the sledge tube, and the rod end is like $29.99. I'm telling you, this metric chassis is awesome. So now I'll have full adjustability of my tie rod assembly like I did before. But what I didn't have before was adjustability up and down to take care of the bump steer angle and just make it handle better. So I'm pretty excited about that. This fits in most GM tapers from what it says. I don't know if you guys want the little part numbers on here. There's your sledge tube assembly, right? And that's your little hardware assembly. Comes with your rod ends and your inner tie rod and all that stuff. All this stuff's on their website. It's usually all on the suggested portions down there. But ultimately, I'm putting together a pretty decent front end system for almost next to nothing here. So I got the spindles outside. I just sprayed some paint on them, some blue that I had in the cabinet just because I don't want them to rust. I'm going to go press these bushings out, press the ball joint out, and then reassemble this pig, and we'll see what it looks like. We'll see you next time. Whoa! Ha! So, we got all that stuff zipped in there, alright? Control arms are in, springs are in, drop spindles are in, doing their dropping. And so here's a shot of the car. Man, look at that pre-runner. Oh wait, that's the wrong channel. Ha! Ain't no pre-runner. But what we do got, I'll move this little guy out the way. Bam! So don't judge my paint. Whatever I got in the toolbox is what gets put on the car. So right now we're rocking tires roll. So right now we're rocking some blue on this here spindle, which was the color of the old truck, and some, I don't know what that is, army green crap I was planning on doing for the car. But take you in here. You can see I got the Speedway tubular upper control arms. Man, these things are tubular. If you guys remember the turtles. Got my tall upper ball joint here. Here's drop spindle. There's those bump stops talking about earlier. Little sway bar action going on. Here's my little tie rod assembly in there. The inner tie rod, switch tube. Here's that little tie rod adapter. That thing's pretty good. Still gotta drop it down and play with it, measure it out. It looks like it's like the center leak's a little high, but we'll have to measure it out and see where it comes out to. And that 1-inch tall lower ball joint, doing its ball jointness in there. The ultra low friction. Yep. So that's that little guy. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the front end. I'm going to zip these little tires back on there and tighten the lug nuts down and drop it down and see what the ride height looks like. So stay tuned.